Okay, first, just a quick few reminders for everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. One of us will try to answer them as soon as possible. And if those questions are going to take longer, we can take them after the session. The last 10 minutes of the session are for Q&A. So thank you so much for joining the session. So let's get started. So hello everyone, my name is Raghav Tulshipagwale and I'm a staff engineer at Nutanix in the core data path group. Today, we would like to share our experience with RocksDB, a popular open source key value store that has become a fundamental building block for Nutanix offerings. So let's try to understand what drove us to use Nutanix RocksDB in the first place. Nutanix is all about simplifying technology, which results in your organization being able to focus more on your applications and your data that run the business. Regardless of if your application runs its critical applications in on-premise or in public cloud or a hybrid of two, Nutanix here is to help. How we got started with this vision is first laying a foundation with something called as hyper-converged infrastructure, or HCI. HCI simplifies storage, compute, and virtualization by providing all the three in a simplified appliance. And because Nutanix HCI solution is a software-based solution, it gives customers more freedom by being hypervisor, hardware, on-premise, or public cloud agnostic. This HCI software adheres to the web scale principles architecture, where the software manages the entire lifecycle, scale, and resilience of the system. The Nutanix solution is a converged storage plus compute solution which leverages and creates a distributed platform for running workloads. Each node runs an industry standard hypervisor and a Nutanix controller virtual machine, or a CVM. The Nutanix CVM is what runs the Nutanix software and serves all the I/O operations for the hypervisor and all the VMs running on that host. Together, a group of Nutanix nodes forms a Nutanix cluster that is responsible for providing data and control management capabilities. All the services and components are distributed across all the CVMs in a cluster to provide high availability and linear performance at scale. The user-facing Nutanix product is extremely simple to deploy and use. This is primarily possible through abstractions and a lot of automation and integration in the software. Here is a detailed view of the main Nutanix cluster components. Let's not worry about this. We don't have to memorize this. For this session, we'll just talk about a few components. Stargate is one of the first components which is responsible for all the data management and I/O operations and is the main interface from the hypervisor. This service runs on every node in the cluster in order to serve localized I/Os. Cassandra, which is the second service, stores the metadata in a distributed ring-like manner based upon heavily modified open source Apache Cassandra. The Paxos algorithm used in Cassandra is utilized to enforce strict consistency. This service also runs on every node in the system. Curator, the third service that runs on each node, is responsible for background tasks for including garbage collection or driving the data transformations, disk balancing, proactive scrubbing, and many others. Within the CVM, the Stargate process is responsible for handling all the I/Os coming from the user VMs. When a write request lands at Stargate, there is a write characterizer which will determine if the write gets persisted to the extent store or to the oplog. Similarly, For reads, the read characterizer is responsible for handling reads and managing caching and read ahead. The oplog is similar to a file system journal, and it acts as the staging area to handle bursts of random writes, coalesce them, and sequentially drain them to the extent store. For sequential workloads, oplog is bypassed and the writes directly go to the extent store. The extent store is the persistent bulk storage for the distributed storage fabric and spans all the device tiers. Extent store is responsible for disk management and data transformations along with the data storage. And finally, the unified cache is the read cache, which is used for data, metadata, and is stored in the CVM's memory. Here is a quick view of anatomy of a write. Here, we show how extent store writes persist a write by using a controller VM example. The first node acts as the coordinator of the overall write operation, and it initiates a global transaction which is first recorded by the distributed metadata store, which is Cassandra. And this translates to 3 network hops and 3 disk IOs. This is to support a single round of Apaxos protocol. At this juncture, the extent store on CVM1 initiates local transaction and triggers a parallel local transaction on CVM2, which is the replica of the extent store in this case. As part of the local transaction, the expected change to the data is logged locally, which translates to a disk IO. Once the local transaction is started, the data is returned to the persistent medium, triggering respective IOs. The local transaction is marked complete after the data is written. The global write transaction or the coordinator marks the overall operation complete, which again translates to writes to Cassandra. It is pretty evident that this is a very long IO path where the write amplification could be up to 12x for a single user outstanding IO. So Nutanix Engineering has been working on 3 major goals for its distributed storage fabric. First, improve sustained random write performance. On many performance escalations, we saw that the extent store was not able to drive desired sustained random write performance. This was mainly because of high write amplification and the significant involvement of the metadata store in the IO path. Given the falling prices of the spindles and a proportional increase in the capacities, supporting deep storage nodes for use cases like object storage, long-term storage services, backups became an important priority for us. Our goal was to support at least 300 terabytes per node. The background data management system curator uses metadata store to make decisions based on reading and scanning the metadata. These scans become very costly operations as the cluster size grows. Overall, the cost of the global metadata management to support various use cases was increasing. To address this cost, we aspired to change the fundamentals behind all these operations. So, as we outlined all these requirements and considering the very high write amplification from the long IO path that we just saw in the previous slide, it became increasingly clear to us that we needed a fundamental change to the architecture of the existing extent store. Bring the metadata closer to the data became the foundational principle for redesigning the existing extent store. In other words, make extent store autonomous so it can make decisions about its local data using the local metadata instead of consulting the global distributed metadata store. This change would enable individual nodes to manage its own data and provide local background data management. We therefore had to bring in the physical layout of the data from the global metadata store into the local extent store. To do this, we needed a database or a key value store that could be deployed locally so that we could move all the physical data layout metadata from the metadata store or the global metadata store into extent store. Given the increasing sizes of disks, each disk would become an autonomous storage engine or an autonomous storage system, which is capable of managing or handling its own data as well as metadata. So what were we looking for in the key value store or the database of choice? So this local metadata storage system required a completely new view. We had the following goals when we started researching for a potential key value store or a database. So it should reside in the same address space as the extent store service, which enables co-located data and metadata. It also helps by avoiding any sort of network hops to access the metadata. It is write optimized backend with acceptable read and scan performance. It should be able to provide lightweight ACID properties, which are typically provided by any standard database. And finally, it should be able to expose external APIs very similar to Cassandra so that we are able to reuse the metadata APIs that we were currently using. RocksDB. RocksDB became the answer that we were looking for. The Nutanix extent store is completely implemented in advanced C++. So our preference was to have an embeddable library that can link into the extent store service. This actually helps us to co-locate both data as well as the metadata and avoids any sort of process or network hops. Given our strong familiarity with log structure merge trees due to Cassandra, RocksDB key value store became an obvious choice. LSM storage engines are optimized for write performance and provide acceptable read and scan performance. And hence they support our primary goal of improving sustained random write performance. RocksDB provides an interface in terms of keys and values, which are arbitrary style streams. The foundational APIs exposed by RocksDB like put, delete, get, and iterator. We were already familiar with these APIs due to Cassandra, and that became an easy choice for choosing the key value store. Support for write-ahead log-based persistence, data checksums were crucial for us. RocksDB support for ACID properties through features like write path support and snapshot isolation with semantics similar to multi-version concurrency control made it really attractive. One of the most essential and vital features of RocksDB is the persistence layer, which we call as the ENV. ENV allows you to deploy RocksDB over any backend as long as implementation complies with the ENV interface. And finally, one of the most important factors for us, RocksDB's active open source community, which is supported by organizations like Facebook, Uber, Airbnb, and Netflix. And that further boosted our confidence in using RocksDB. To bring the metadata closer to the data, we redesigned the metadata store and moved the local state metadata from the original distributed metadata store into the extent store. We used a multi-embedded databases model where each database is a RocksDB instance. The extent store, which is one of the components of the IO store service, manages all the data in the disks hosted by that node or machine. In this mode, each disk hosts its local metadata in the RocksDB instance backed by the same disk. We call this newly redesigned extend store as the Autonomous Extend Store, also called as AES, as it manages both its own data as well as physical layout metadata. Each RocksDB instance is an Autonomous Extend Store database, also called as AESDB, which holds metadata for the data on the disk where it has been hosted. This is a quick list of the configurations that we used to deploy RocksDB for AES. So let's take a quick look at how does the new write path look now. We can clearly see that the number of over-the-network IOs and metadata writes have significantly reduced. The metadata updates now stored in the local key value store, also called as the AESDB, and they are written asynchronously to it. This clearly provided the boost in the performance that we were looking for. It should be pretty clear based on the numbers that we will see in the next slide. It is pretty evident that the sustained random write performance saw a significant improvement. We could typically see up to 8 to 10x improvements on various deployments. This would not have been possible without the re-architecture effort and also without the use of RocksDB. Said that, every coin has two sides. We got the best out of RocksDB, but we also had a lot of learnings along the way. In the subsequent sections, we will go over some of these learnings and improvements that we did to RocksDB. Thank you. Over to Pulkit now.
Thanks, Raghav. Hello, everyone. My name is Pulkit Kapoor, and I work in the Core Data Path group at Nutanix. In this section, I'll be talking about the RocksDB synchronous and asynchronous read and write APIs, along with their performance comparisons. Let's go over the basics first. Memtable is an in-memory buffer that hosts the incoming writes. We use the sorted skip list memtable implementation at Nutanix. If write-ahead log is enabled, each write is first persisted in the before being written to the memtable. As the size of memtable reaches a threshold, it is converted into an immutable memtable, further flushing it to storage, generating an ssTable file, which is immutable. Also, we have a background thread performing compaction of ssTables to a larger ssTable by getting rid of the garbage. Now let's go over a typical read path. We start by looking for the desired key in the mutable memtable, immutable memtables, and the ssTable files from the newest to the oldest, which might result in multiple disk IOs. Limitation of the read API, which includes get, multi-get, scan API, is its synchronous nature. Client threads issuing reads are blocked within RocksDB while reading from the disk or acquiring DB logs. Here we compare the synchronous versus asynchronous version of the read API. On the left, we show the sync version of the API. Client thread sends a read request to RocksDB that ends up performing the blocking disk read. On the contrary, in the async version, client thread with the read request offloads the request to a separate RocksDB read thread. While the read thread is performing read, the client thread is free to do some other work. Once the read is complete, client thread is notified of the read result. Our requirements from the API was to allow asynchronous programming model to be used for better thread utilization by avoiding to block physical threads for disk IOs, network IOs, or while acquiring logs. This model allows us to achieve the same or maybe better performance without shedding too many threads to the process. To achieve this, we utilize Nutanix fibers, which are coroutine style, cooperatively scheduled application threads. Each fiber has its own CPU state and its stack, but needs to be scheduled on host thread, such as a POSIX thread. When a fiber needs to block waiting for an event, it returns control back to the host thread, which is free to pick up some other work. With fibers and Linux asynchronous I/O, we were able to design non-blocking reads using vanilla RocksDB code. Let's take a look at RocksDB read path with Nutanix fibers. We have a read fiber pool, which manages a pool of fibers and uses a bunch of host threads as its provider. All the read operations are added to the pool along with their done callbacks, while the client thread returns. Fiber executing on a host thread picks up the read operation and issues it to RocksDB. It ultimately submits the I/O to the asynchronous I/O pool. At this point, the fiber blocks itself waiting for the I/O to complete in background, while the host thread is free to pick up new work. Once the I/O is complete, host thread resumes a fiber from where it left off. It invokes the done callback to let the client know of the read operation completion. Through this, a single thread is able to provide multiple outputs. Here we compare the asynchronous and synchronous read path throughput with effective number of outstanding read operations. For synchronous read path, which is the default read path, number of outstanding are maintained with equivalent number of threads with no fibers enabled. For asynchronous read path, a single thread can maintain any number of outstanding. In this experiment, we have measured throughput for asynchronous reads with 1 and 2 threads as the provider to the read fiber pool with different number of outstanding operations. We observe that the asynchronous read performance with single or 2 threads and fibers enabled is slightly lower in comparison to the synchronous read performance with multiple threads equal to the number of outstanding operations. Hence, with far less number of threads in the system, async reads are able to achieve considerable read performance. Similar to the last experiment, in this slide we compare asynchronous and synchronous read path latency with effective number of outstanding read operations. We observe that the asynchronous read latency with single or 2 threads and fibers enabled is slightly higher in comparison to the synchronous read latency. Now let's talk about RocksDB's write path. Say we have 3 threads within RocksDB with a write operation. The first thread is chosen as the leader, while all the other threads become followers. Followers spin for a while, followed by blocking itself, while the leader does a bunch of work for the group. It pre-processes the writes, checks if it needs to switch to a new mem table, switch to a new wall, or maybe schedule a flush. Creates a write patch group. Here it combines itself, F1 and F2 to one write. If wall writes are enabled, it issues a wall write followed by sync, post which it signals the followers in the current write patch group to parallelly write to the mem table. Say F3 enters the RocksDB with its write. It is simply blocked till the previous write patch group completes. Leader F1 and F2 complete parallel mem table writes and wait for the last thread in the write patch group to finish the mem table write by spinning and followed by blocking. Say F1 is the last one to finish the mem table write. It gathers all the results from the other threads in the batch group, updates the sequence number, and signals the other threads in the write batch group to complete their write. It as well signals F3 to become the leader for the next write batch group. Disadvantage with the current approach is that follower client threads spin or block itself in the worst case, while leader is pre-processing writes that includes switching mem table or scheduling a flush, while the leader is writing to the wall and maybe syncing, while the last thread in the write batch group is completing the parallel mem table write, and while the previous batch group is completing the work that blocks F3 in the above example. This spinning simply leads to CPU wastage. Our approach to solve this problem was by adding a single-threaded thread pool inside RocksDB. Client thread adds work along with the write-done callback to the write thread pool and returns. Thread pool thread within RocksDB combines a bunch of writes into a write batch group, performs leader duties, sequence writes to memory as they are in-memory updates, sequence number updates, and invokes the write-done callback, marking the completion of the write. Now the writer thread is free to pick up the next write batch group. In this slide, we compared the asynchronous and synchronous write path throughput with effective outstanding write operations. For synchronous write path, a fixed number of threads are needed to generate the same number of outstanding operations. For asynchronous write path, a single thread is enough to maintain any number of outstanding operations. This is because the client threads are not blocked within RocksDB while performing the write. The write is offloaded to an internal RocksDB thread along with the done callback. All the writes are happening in a VM environment on a vDisk for this experiment. We observe with increasing number of outstanding operations, asynchronous write path is able to match or even exceed the synchronous write performance. In this slide, similar to last experiment, we compared asynchronous and synchronous write path with CPU utilization. Similar to last experiment, for synchronous write path, a fixed number of threads are needed to generate the same number of outstanding operations. For async write path, a single thread is enough to maintain the same number of outstanding ops. Since there are far fewer threads in the system needed to generate the same workload in case of asynchronous write path, this reduces the CPU utilization greatly. Thank you, everyone. Now I'll be handing off to Sandeep, who will be talking about RocksDB scale problem, learnings, and solutions. Sandeep, I think you're talking on mute.
Sorry. Thank you, Pulkit. I'm Sandeep, and I work in the core data path team at Nutanix. In this section, I'll be taking you through the surprises and learnings that we went through with RocksDB at scale. As we went along with this journey with RocksDB, we found that as the scale of our deployments grew, gaps started showing in our system. We started seeing performance and stability as DB sizes approached hundreds of gigabytes. Specifically, we were able to narrow down on 3 critical problems: higher than expected memory usage, sustained write performance issues due to write stalls, and scan performance issues. I'll walk through each of these problems and how we were able to overcome them. Let's start with the memory footprint problems. I'll start with how each RocksDB SSTable file consumes memory. Each SSTable file comprises of 4K sized data blocks which store the key value pairs. We then have 2-level indexes which store the start key of each data block that are used to binary search to a given key more efficiently. To minimize unnecessary lookups, we also have a Bloom filter per SSTable file. Now, index go into an LRU cache called block cache, and Bloom filters are pinned in heap outside cache of KB size. But none of these add up to each 60-bit footprint we were observing. We found that the problem was due to bloat during Bloom filter construction. While creating a new SSTable file, RocksDB needs to buffer all hashes in memory before populating the final hash table bitmap, which is 4 times larger than the Bloom filter itself. This was needed as the size of the hash table depends on the number of keys in the file. and this can be known only at the end. This float can go beyond 4 gigabytes in SS tables that store a billion keys. To understand the scan performance issues, let's take an example of this DB, which has a few duplicates and also deletes. Since SS tables can have overlapping ranges and keys, we need to iterate through all the files and merge the results using a heap to finally return the results back to the client. Now, as we run through the scan, notice how the reads from SS tables 2 and 3 are being wasted for keys K1, K2, and K3. And to finally return 3 keys back to the client, which are K2, K4, and K6, we ended up reading all 9 keys from the DB. When the DB size goes into billions of key values, the garbage can go into order of millions of keys, at which point we saw RocksDB scans take minutes to complete, and by which time the client would have already timed out and would have sent a retry. Now this led to retry storms where we would be executing several scans for the same client op, putting pressure on our resources. However, we also introduced circuit breakers on deadlines to mitigate this, but it did not solve the problem of scan unavailability across the cluster. We needed compactions to get rid of garbage and bring scan performance back to where we like it. However, RocksDB not having garbage-based heuristic meant that the window of unavailability is not deterministic. We also didn't have feedback mechanism from scan to have performance as a key driver for compaction. This only meant that the duration of unavailability ended up as unpredictable. To address this gap, we brought a new component above RocksDB called the Background Task Manager. Its chief responsibility was to track garbage and take corrective actions as needed to keep scan unavailability as low as possible. It proactively polls RocksDB to calculate the amount of garbage and decides if it needs to take corrective action. In case there is a delay or gap not covered by the heuristics, we also have a feedback mechanism built in where a scan failure due to garbage will always trigger corrective actions. Corrective actions can be a combination of flush plus compaction if the deletes are in the mem table, or just a compaction if the deletes are mostly in the on-disk SS tables. In LSM systems, read and especially scan performance is adversely impacted by increase in the number of SS tables. We need compaction to keep this number down to a manageable number, and if we don't, we end up having to throttle our writes. Getting into this stage, however, goes against the core design principle of supporting sustained random writes. Now let's see how this happens more frequently at scale. Let's consider this DB with 101 gigabytes of data spread over 4 SS table files. If a compaction begins for this DB due to whatever reason, be it due to garbage or any other heuristic, this would take several minutes because of its sheer size. Fresh writes will continue to come in during compaction, which will cause new files to be written, and this will take us over the limit that ROC contains on file. While parallel actions would have helped here, the memory load we talked about earlier, parallel compactions was not stage. So now, about the issues we have hit at scale, the requirements from compaction became more clearer. We needed to find which could be achieved by limiting the maximum size of each SS table. Also needed a way to reduce I/O amplification for bandwidth effect and also garbage action on the disk. Our of universal at a single level was not serving our requirements well. RocksDB offers leveled compactions as another possible, but it ruled out due to its much higher write amplification. At the best of both worlds, we choose to universal compaction with multi. Let's see how this strategy gave us the benefit we're looking for. So as you DB changes with a new strategy with levels. All new SS tables will go into L0, due to which we will still have ranges in A0. Logical levels which have folder data that have files with non-overlapping key ranges, and these files can be of fixed size. This strategy allows us to put data out of L0 into lower levels and help us keep L0 as smaller as possible. Since files from L1 are range, we can perform a single binary search across the entire level, which gives us better read and scan performance at larger. This allows us to cap the size of all L1 SS table files, which reduces our memory bloat significantly, allowing us to support parallel compactions. This helps us minimize the data. However, we still have the problem of higher write amplification and the effect on SSD life, since we are triggering more compactions frequently to keep garbage in control, and this becomes a problem. And with this action only needs to rewrite files which have overlapping ranges. So in the diagram, you can clearly see how the last three files in L1 do not overlap with any other file and thus do not need to be touched during compaction. This again helps bring down the I/O amplification. So what were the results of all these changes? We measured both memory bloat and I/O amplification by writing over 300 gigabytes of data to a single RocksDB over 24 hours. And we were able to cut down bloat to under 200 megabytes. And our write amplification also saw a significant improvement. The results on write amplification to go up further as the system ages over weeks and months. These changes are what RocksDB as a technology at any scale across various use cases at Nutanix. Now I would like to talk about an interesting project that we have been working at Nutanix. As we were tackling issues with single instance RocksDB and making improvements there, we encountered services which required high performance, linearly scalable, cloud native, and distributed key value stores. So we took RocksDB to the next level and made ChakraDB, a next generation distributed key value store. I would like to start with the motivation for ChakraDB. Nutanix Distributed Storage Fabric was built with web scale, scale-out design, which can easily scale to petabytes of storage with high availability, resilience, and fault tolerance. With the advent of the world of containers, the compute infrastructure management was moving to bring high tolerance into the compute layer. Such a platform has become a building block for Nutanix next generation offerings like files, objects, etc. which highly distributed microservice architecture based cloud native services required a scalable distributed database to store and manage their metadata. Now let's discuss the requirements of a database suitable for cloud native services. Many services need their metadata layer to offer low latency and high throughput even at larger scale and higher working set sizes. At the same time, it has to be highly efficient with resources as most of our traditional NoSQL DBs are not known to good at resource efficiency. Database has to be distributed and should scale linearly. Being a critical storage system, database has to be highly consistent and satisfy traditional ACID guarantees. At the same time, the system needs to be resistant to any form of data loss. The distributed database has to work on any cloud and platform. It has to be containerized and optimized for the Kubernetes world to be truly cloud native. Many of the new age cloud native applications today have use cases to tier their old data to remote cloud such as S3 or store data remotely in clouds such as EBS, Azure Storage, etc. With the advent of in-storage computing devices, there is also research going on to offload background tasks such as compactions to remote devices. To support all such use cases, it's important for the DB to support remote storage. Being an infrastructure software, all the DB workflows have to be single-click driven. This has been another core design principle for most of Nutanix software. With the above requirements in mind, we wanted to build a database for cloud-native services. So we came up with ChakraDB. ChakraDB is a distributed NoSQL key value store. It incorporates virtual nodes-based sharding design, which we believe is a very powerful concept which enables linear scalability with high throughput and better tail latencies. Each vNode is a wrapper on top of RocksDB and has an entire key value store stack by itself, making it independent. This provides flexibility around data movement and also placement. Virtual nodes design makes the cluster truly elastic as it can be expanded or shrunk seamlessly by simply moving around the vNodes. ChakraDB is designed as a lightweight shim layer on top of set of RocksDB instances using no overhead in the I/O path. ChakraDB is designed on top of RocksDB, which is an LSM-based key value store. LSM data structure is optimized for SSDs and also opens window for new storage technologies and several new architectures, making it future-proof. Also, virtual node architecture of ChakraDB is quite flexible, wherein each vNode encapsulates RocksDB today as its storage engine. However, it can be replaced with some other engine tomorrow. Design enables us to do that. This is how a ChakraDB instance looks like. A ChakraDB instance is a single process that embeds multiple vNodes in it. Each vNode owns a shard in the cluster. It supports both ext4 file system-based volumes and also Nutanix internal plain block-based file system exposed by the Nutanix distributed storage fabric. It has several internal modules such as API interface exposes key value-based APIs today and can expose more feature-rich APIs going forward. Schema Manager handles schema and orchestrates the schema manipulation workflows in the cluster. Background Task Manager, as discussed in the previous section, is responsible for tracking the performance of vNodes and taking corrective actions when required. vNode Manager manages and orchestrates all lifecycle operations of vNodes, such as bringing up a vNode, bringing down a vNode, etc. of ChakraDB. ChakraDB instances can be deployed as pods on Kubernetes platform. This platform can be hosted on any distributed storage fabric or any cloud storage per se. There are three major components in the ChakraDB cluster. ChakraDB instance hosts the storages. It is a core piece of data path. Storage for vNodes are backed by distributed storage fabric, be it from Nutanix or EBS or Azure Storage. Chakra Cluster Manager manages all the control plane traffic in the ChakraDB cluster. This module makes majority of the decisions in the cluster, such as number of ChakraDB cluster width, number of vNodes hosted inside a ChakraDB instance, mapping of shards to vNodes, and so on. It creates all this configuration and stores it in the configuration store. And the last is configuration store, which purses all the ChakraDB configuration. Client services can use ChakraDB client library to talk to ChakraDB. This library fetches the shard mapping from config to send appropriate ChakraDB instances to avoid disruptions. ChakraDB can work in both embedded and remote modes. In embedded, ChakraDB service embed the ChakraDB instance into their process, which would avoid RPC overhead. We have tried the embedded approach with Nutanix objects. ChakraDB can be scaled linearly both inside and outside. vNodes can be scaled within a ChakraDB instance, and ChakraDB instances can be scaled themselves linearly, expanding the cluster. A strong consistency and resiliency is one of the key requirements for any storage software. The high availability and fault tolerance of compute and memory is provided by the containerized platform, whereas strong consistency, high availability, and fault tolerance of storage fabric. Hence, ChakraDB didn't need replication at its level as it seemed, and can offer a lot of these problems to the platform, making it a very lightweight DB distribution layer. While ChakraDB is running in production, deployed as part of Nutanix objects, here are some of the numbers from our internal clusters. That FQA had around 1024 ChakraDB instances with 4 vNodes in each ChakraDB instance. This amounts to around in the cluster. One of our internal cluster went up to pushing around 25 terabytes of data with around 75 billion keys in a 128 node ChakraDB. This translates to around 200 gigabytes with 600 million keys per ChakraDB instance and gigabytes with 150 million keys per vNode. A ChakraDB instance with 11 was handling around 8 billion keys and 1. Data. This instance had around 8 vNodes in it, where each gigabytes of data and around 1 billion keys. This shows the resource efficiency of ChakraDB. Most of these ChakraDB clusters were deployed on a 4-node Nutanix distributed storage fabric cluster. This shows how ChakraDB utilizes full potential of the storage fabric. Now this slide talks about linear scaling. This shows the throughput seen with scaling ChakraDB instances linearly. However, we will continue on to work on increasing these numbers. Currently, we are working on scaling out instances dynamically on a live cluster. This enables the cluster seamlessly with zero or very less impact on the user I/O. We are also working on providing secondary indexing support for ChakraDB. This feature helps clients increase the performance of their queries that do not rely on the primary keys of the table. There is progress to replace Cassandra with ChakraDB in our core Nutanix distributed storage fabric to overcome the issues and bottlenecks seen with Cassandra. One of our internal product for its solution to cloud-backed disaster recovery is working to use ChakraDB for its metadata local caching requirements. As part of it, we are working on running ChakraDB. There is also a storage engine for one of our control plane database, which stores time series data. Some of the work which we are planning to take up in the near future includes actions, which is a powerful feature used in traditional databases. RocksDB supports transactions today. With that, within a shard, a ChakraDB is easy. However, across shard, we will make Postgres supports pluggable storage engine. We would like its default storage engine with ChakraDB, which will scalable storage engine. Another task which we want to pick up is to open source our work. This is back in our mind since on this project. We started off pushing back some of our changes into open source RocksDB. I would like to end the talk with discussing our vision for ChakraDB. We have discussed about the new age cloud-native services. While majority of their requirements are satisfied by a distributed key value store, they do have other subsystems which might require a time series database to store their stack or a rich layer or relational database which is ACID compliant and so on. It made us clear that the shopper system data along with adhering to the fundamental principles of cloud-ready services. This system consists of two parts. The top part covers various data models, while half state is common for all and should be able to run on any cloud. ChakraDB can fill the bottom half distributed and scalable storage engine. In most of the distributed databases, their performance and queries are mostly determined by the underlying storage engine that provides the support features. To build ChakraDB as scalable, distributed, high-performance storage engine with support for key value APIs today, we believe it can be extended to work as storage engine for any other data model such as document model like Mongo, row column based like Cassandra, relational like Postgres, and more, giving way for a truly multi-model database. We are also planning to publish a series of blogs in ChakraDB. Feel free to refer to them for more details. Thank you all. We are open for Q&A. For any queries or more details, you can contact us at rocksdb@nutanix.com. We have two questions in the chat, which we'll take up. Raghav, do you want to, or Pulkit, do you want to take up the first question?
Yeah, Pulkit, go ahead.
Yeah. So for the first question, so the question is, do we plan to submit the RocksDB async API enhancements to the open source? Yeah, so yes, we definitely have plans to open source the read and write async path changes. However, currently the changes utilize internal Nutanix utils that limits us from open sourcing them. Said that, we are working on finding a workaround and to this problem, and once we have a solution, we can definitely open source them and try to get them merged in open source RocksDB code. Sandeep, do you want to go on the second question?
Yeah. So let me read out the second question. Is ChikroDB a Nutanix internal knowledge system? Are there plans to create an independent product out of it for external consumption? We do have plans to externalize the ChikroDB. Today, it does work in Nutanix infrastructure and ecosystem, but as I have mentioned, the plan is to make it work on any ecosystem, be it Azure storage, AWS, or etc., or on any cloud. And as long as they provide distributed storage fabric with a containerized platform. So the plan is to externalize the ChikroDB as an independent product so that anyone can consume it. And we also have plans to open source the product. Yes.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Right. There are more questions. Did you happen to catch a ZNS talk this morning? Have you explored performance on ZNS drives, or would you like to? We would definitely like to explore the performance on these ZNS drives. However, we didn't catch the talk, but thanks for informing. We will definitely catch up and see what we can do with the new drives.
That's good.
We are open to explore any new technologies and any new architectures.
Any other questions, guys? Yeah, we'll be here for next, I think, 5 minutes at least. So feel free to send us any questions, and we'll try our best to answer them. Yeah, and I would also like to thank the whole Percona organizers for doing an excellent job of doing this. It was a very smooth transition, even with this new platform. So thanks so much to everyone at Percona.
The time frame on open sourcing the RocksDB enhancements. Pulkit, do you want to take that, or
I can talk about this? So as we said, the changes that we did to RocksDB for asynchronous, I would say, APIs. So those changes, we can definitely push them out. But the only problem is it also comes with a baggage of the internal utils. So there are definitely discussions happening to figure out if we should open source all the Nutanix utils as well or not. And if not, can we leverage some other external open source, let's say utilities like maybe Google C++ libraries or Facebook C++ libraries like Folly to actually implement the changes? And if that is easily possible, then we would actually open source it. Technically, I do not have a clear answer what is the time frame, but in few months would be more of a vague answer that I can give, but nothing specific at this point. Cool. Okay. Great. So Gonzalo, I will stop sharing the screen. Okay, thank you everyone. I think we'll drop off.